Well, hello, everybody. It is that time. We are right now. The whole point of this is I just want to welcome you to the world of GPS Weekly. And what that means is this is normally just once a week for very close members, but we have the opportunity of doing the very first of our interviews with icons. And what that means is this. We really want to make sure that we are a part of what we call hairdressers helping hairdressers, meaning regardless of brand affiliations, regardless of where you are in your station in life, how is it that just hairdressers can help hairdressers by learning from other people's experience? And today we have on with us, we have Mr. Stephen Moody, and his background is really with Sassoons. I had a very small, all of my training was with Sassoons. So quite frankly, I had all of my training that I have had and the inspirations that I've had, my mentors that I've had at the very beginning, the ones that really helped me to become more grounded in cutting and want to be a good cutter from an architectural standpoint, that came from Sassoons. And so to me, being able to have this man on board right now is a true honor. And the whole purpose behind this is that, so as the hairdressing community can start to connect with icons, because, you know, even we were just having a brief conversations with Stephen prior, and you'll have to give us a little moment here. We're having some technical difficulties where we had Stephen on board and he was, and all of a sudden he got cut off. So we're getting him back on board now. So this whole portion is, we have him. Okay. So we have, and we just have Stephen coming on here. So I must say that first off that it really is. I was talking to Stephen just earlier and saying, I was actually quite nervous about this because, you know, he's been an icon in the industry, like a distant icon, an ideal of mine. People, we all look up to him. And I know that, you know, Stephen, there's been people in the hairdressing industry that you've personally touched and you've made them better. You've changed their lives. There's people that you might not have personally touched, but just because of who you are, you've touched those people, myself being one of those, who you've made because of you and your talent and your dedication to the craft and the work that you do. You've helped the world of our industry to raise its bar, to push themselves further, and really to really get on board with becoming what our industry is truly about. And it's not what Hollywood projects us as simple folk that don't earn a good living and we're all flakes. We are incredible human beings that can have, if we put ourselves to it, six-figure earnings that are on par with other professions. And I have to just say that it is an honor and a true pleasure to have you on here. You know, for those of you who do or do not know of Chris Moody, if I can give away kind of simply the obvious, being as you share the last name, siblings. Chris Moody and I are presenters at heart, friends at heart. We mentor and coach one another. We're a part of the same team, which we call GPS. And this is brought to you normally what would be our weekly GPS session. But because we had the honor of having Stephen on here, we really wanted to have all of us on and broadcast this worldwide. Chris, just so everybody knows, Chris, if you don't know Chris, out of the UK, he is an incredible educator, and he is a credible teacher of teachers and facilitators. And it's one that we've had a history together for, I don't know, probably 20 some odd years. And it's been a part where you help to teach someone and then they actually grow and in my mind surpass what your talents are. So, you know, as this program is brought to you by Chris Moody and myself, Stephen, I want to extend just a personal welcome. And if you want to just anything you have to say just to start off with, before we start pillaging your history and your knowledge that you have.
Well, thank you, Chris, and everybody at GPS for inviting me to come on here and to say a few words. And probably most importantly of all, thank you for everybody who's listening, who's tuned in on Facebook Live and are giving up what is your, let's see, Tuesday morning? Was it Wednesday morning?
Wednesday morning, yeah.
In Los Angeles, and midday in New York City, and in London, in the UK, 5 o'clock. So yeah, thank you for giving up your time. And just as a precursor to everyone who has tuned in, and to you, Chris, please feel free to pillage away.
Yeah. And just before, I'm going to let Chris get on to some of the questions, because I feel that it's a great honor because, I have lots of questions, but I know Chris knows a lot of your history and some of the things you may or may not want to get out in this conversation, and we'll leave that up to the two of you. However, I just want to let everybody else know, if you have on this Zoom webinar, there is a question and answer box that you can bring up. So if you just type any questions that you have in, or if you see something going on, if you go into the Q&A box and you can just type into there. So and you just type that in. Now I will let you know we've got about a 20-second delay between the time we get your question and the time that we can respond to it, just so you're aware of that we're not ignoring you. So Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you.
So over 40 years at the forefront of hairdressing education, and I've told you before, you are and always have been one of my hairdressing heroes. You're the person that got me into hairdressing when I was 16 years old, coming and visiting you in London and seeing you and all your friends at Sassoon's in London, got me involved in this industry. What got you involved in this industry? Stephen?
Well, I think it's a common denominator, Chris, between you and I, and that is our connection, which is our mother.
Yeah.
Some people listening will probably be familiar with this story, but I was kind of raised in a hair salon, and I almost said my mother. I'm going to say our mother. I think it's fair to say she was a struggling single mother, sort of raising me. Again, that probably sounds very familiar to people listening in, a single mother hairdresser. I think that's quite sort of a common denominator to many. And, struggling too, struggling, I think, financially, but I think also struggling for direction and struggling creatively. And, fortunately, for many of us, she had the common sense to sort of reach out for help, which, I think when we reach out for help, Chris, I think the worst thing that people can say is no.
Mm-hmm.
And, she had the good sense to do that. I think she realized what she didn't know. And she arbitrarily reached out to someone in the biggest city in the world, London, and reached out to this person and said, I really like what you're doing, and I don't know how to do that. And I think it's the way forward, and would you teach me? And to cut a long story short, that's exactly what happened. And this man sort of helped her and guided her. And I think to one degree or other mentored her. And, she kind of threw on the table, hey, there's probably hundreds, maybe thousands of people in my position who are roller setting hair and teasing hair. And here you are cutting straight lines into hair. And they probably would be happy to pay hundreds, thousands of pounds to learn this from you. Maybe you should open a school. Maybe you should open an academy. And this man's name is Vidal Sassoon. And I was incredibly fortunate, as my brother Chris 7 years later was, in the sense that we kind of watched this evolution of pretty much a home-based hair salon grow both financially and creatively and organization-wise. And you know, a lot of that was down to the investment in a little word that I think all of us are very passionate about, and that is education.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of, I witnessed this as a kid growing up. And again, like my brother Chris, you know, we sat around the dinner table every night and we heard about all the pains and the tribulations of operating a hair salon, which I don't think are probably any different today, in the sense that, you know, when you're hiring staff, they're coming and going, they're leaving, they're getting pregnant, they're getting disillusioned, they want a pay rise, you know. And I think most people listening in will probably sympathize with that, is, you know, as hairdressers, we're a high maintenance group. We're not an easy group to manage. And I kind of witnessed this and was privy to this as a kid growing up. And I just got incredibly passionate about hair and watching what was going on in the salon. And as I kind of reached that age where I kind of had to decide what to do as a career, I kind of definitely thought to myself, I wanted to be somehow, some way part of the hair business. But I think a tipping point was probably, I think when I was 13, she took me to a trade show in London, and it's called Salon International. Mm-hmm. And it's arguably one of the biggest trade shows in the world. And I clearly remember watching a man on stage who did this incredible sort of upstyle, used lots of gel on the upstyle, and he kind of pulled it all into a ponytail. And then he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a balloon, which was like a sausage-shaped balloon, and he inflated the balloon and he kind of did a roller set on this girl's hair, and he set her hair round this sausage balloon. He then whipped out a cigarette and he lit the cigarette and nonchalantly sort of popped the balloon, and what was left was this beautiful curl roller set where the balloon had been. And I looked at him and thought, I could do that. I could do that.
You needed to learn to start smoking first.
Fast forward to sort of 30-some years, I still can't do it. But this guy was just a couple of years older than me, and his name was Anthony Mascola.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, and I just looked at that and I thought, you know, from a serious standpoint, I'd really like to be able to help others.
Yeah.
In a way that sort of had been an advantage to my family and particularly my mother and the business and the family business that I was around. I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great if you could be involved with hair, but at the same time sort of hold hands with hairdressers and help them on this journey, which is really kind of, you know, I think we can all agree is a never-ending journey.
Right. Yeah.
Of raising the bar, raising their bar, and helping them. And I mean, at that point, I wasn't even a hairdresser. I wasn't even an apprentice. But I just had this thought of, oh, wouldn't it be great? It was this kind of this romantic notion of helping others. So yeah, I think at about age 13, I just sort of had this vision of kind of where I'd like to go and what I'd like to do. And about the same age, it's quite funny actually, because about the same age, we went on a family vacation to America. And I clearly remember landing in Los Angeles. And at age 13, I thought, this is it. This is where I want to be. And again, sort of it all sort of came together. And again, as a kid growing up, I just had this vision of hair, helping people. And I think part of that romantic notion as well was travel. Yeah. You know, really sort of, I remember going to Heathrow Airport and looking at the board, you know, the big board, and it had Beijing, and it had Moscow, and it had Shanghai, and it had whatever. And I just had this really romantic sort of fantasy of thinking to myself, wow, wouldn't it be great to just kind of pick one of those and just go? And And yeah, I get paid to do that now.
You must not be far away from that, because I can't think of a country that you haven't been to in your work. I can't think of a country that you haven't either taught in or done a show in or mentored in. Can you think of, is there anywhere you haven't been? I can't think of anywhere you haven't been.
There is. There is. And if there's anybody listening,
Uzbekistan.
if there's anybody tuned in and listening that's from New Zealand.
Oh, really? New Zealand?
For whatever reason, I've
shocks me.
been to New Zealand. I really want to go.
That's still on
and
your
listen,
list.
in January the 19th, January 19th, 2020 is my 60th birthday. And I've already fathomed out what I want to do.
Go to New Zealand.
I get paid.
I want to go to New Zealand, Chris.
Well, listen, if you get the booking for this one, we want a 15% bird dog fee.
That's great.
Yeah.
Stephen, you know, it's interesting. I don't know. I will tell you, if I'm in front of the public, I will always say I never watch chick flicks. But the mere fact that I'm going to bring up the movie, The Sliding Doors, I don't know if you ever saw it. It had Gwyneth Paltrow, and in there, she the whole thing of Sliding Doors is she runs down the subway, goes to get on the subway, and she misses it, can't get on. And then the director takes you through the narrative that, like, what would have been the two lives of, I think she was Nancy, I think was her character name. What would Nancy's life be like if she caught it, and the one that she didn't? So it gives the two narratives, where she missed it. She missed it. She went on to be, she ended up getting divorced. Her job didn't work out, and as we know, blah blah blah, failure. And then on the other one, it goes on to extreme happiness and success, etc. And while I will say that we don't, I only watch chick flicks when I'm alone and nobody can see me cry. However, it's kind of a parallel in our lives, isn't it? You have this success story, and I'm sure that later we're going to talk about some of the other things. I'm sure that, like everybody, you've had setbacks, but right now you have this life that a lot of people wish they could do, especially the educators, wish I could travel the world, etc. So if you had to put yourself in that narrative of the sliding doors, and let's say, was there an incident an example where a door shut for you, and if you wouldn't have taken a different task, it looked at it differently, done something differently, then what do you think that would have been? Was there something in your life that you could have had the door slammed in your face and yet you went on anyway?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I haven't seen the movie, but I can quite imagine, Chris, what that narrative is. And I think there might be a couple of different ones for me. And I think probably the first one is, I mentioned my mum reaching out to the Dell and basically, asking for help. And I kind of mentioned earlier on that, when we reach out for help, particularly in our industry, the worst thing that people can say is no. But again, for the younger people who are kind of listening in here, what I found 90% of the time, when you reach out to people in our profession, they're very accommodating, and they're very kind, and if they can, they typically will help. It's part of our. I think it's part of our DNA. Mm-hmm. But when that happened, it could have been that he tore up the letter, or he sort of kind of ignored it, or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, Chris and I are from a very industrial part of the north of England. We could have been working down a coal mine or in a steelworks or whatever, because her business really wasn't doing terribly well, and she needed help. And that man could quite easily have just ignored the letter, or said no. basically. So I think that was probably a quote unquote, a tipping point, definitely. And then I think another tipping point too for me was, and I clearly remember this. I went through and did my apprenticeship at Sassoon, and I kind of went through the whole program and learned to do women's hair. And then at Sassoon, you typically learn to do color or cutting, and then within cutting, it's kind of women's or men's.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, when I qualified and was due to go on the floor and work as a qualified stylist, there wasn't a position available in a ladies' salon. And they said to me, we've got this position available in a barber shop, in a Sassoon men's salon. And for a fleeting moment, I kind of went through my mind. I thought, well, I don't really want to do that. I'm not really interested in cutting men's hair, and I want to stay with women's hair. And that, I think, was a turning point too, Chris, in the sense that for a second I thought, oh, sorry, I'll go back and work with mum and dad, or I'll go and work for another company or whatever. And then I thought, you know what? Give it a try.
Yeah.
Give it a try. And in hindsight, Chris, I went into that barber shop and I really truly thought I could cut hair very well. I was full of myself. But in reality, I couldn't cut hair well at all.
Yeah.
And after doing, 10 and 15 men's haircuts a day for a year, I walked out of that barber shop at the end of the year, and my ability to deal with hair, work with hair, cut hair, was elevated so much more.
Yeah.
So I think that was a tipping point in my life too.
Yeah.
And again, it was that thing of just, well, what's the worst that could happen? A month down the road, you absolutely hate it, quit. But don't quit now. Try, give it a try, roll the dice, see where you get to. In actual fact, it became probably one of the highlights of my whole career. It really was at the time, I thought it was a negative, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But in reality, it became an enormous positive.
Yeah, because it really is. Don't you find that the men's hair and having the ability to cut men's hair really pushes you into doing short hair? Because most men want short hair. It allows you to do all of the great creative things. And even nowadays, a lot of really super creative things are happening with men's hair as well.
It is, yeah. And I was actually talking to someone 2 weekends ago in Denver about this, actually. And they said, well, what are you really excited about at the moment? And I said, black girls and men.
Mm.
And then I thought, so why? And I just think at the moment, men are having some great, strong statement haircuts, and it really requires a lot of discipline and control to cut that hair. And then obviously there's this massive movement towards, girls with curly hair, celebrating curly hair and not trying to be somebody else, not trying to be a white girl or a girl with straight hair.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm really kind of enjoying, people that follow me on Instagram will probably see that, I really can't stop doing curly hair and black girls because, again, there's that expressive sort of element involved with that hair, that hair type. So yeah, it was a tipping point for me in my career. And I think to your point, Chris, too, I think at the moment, with men's hair, there's a tremendous amount of clipper work, which is super skillful, and these fades and everything. But the men's work that I was involved with was just a whisker longer.
Yeah.
And I think it really, what it taught me was to make the comb and the scissors do the talking, and to really read into what is this man's hair texture. Because as we all know, men don't typically, stop at every shop window and look at themselves in the shop window, or, in a restaurant, they go to the bathroom in 3s and 4s and, play with the hair. So typically, unlike a woman's head of hair, you do their hair once and you're done, and they're not really flat ironing and curling ironing and primping the hair. So it taught me a tremendous amount. It was a fantastic tipping point. And then I think the next one, the third and final one for me, was when, after 32 years, 3 months, 16 days and 1.5 hours, I stopped working for Sassoon. And at the time, it was very much a downer for me. And it was quite upsetting, to be honest with you. But again, I just thought to myself, there's really only 2 places to be. One is the present and the other is the future. And I just remember driving home and thinking, well, 20 minutes ago, I stopped working for Sassoon, but that's in the past. That's history. And that cannot be changed. So, just have a completely different mindset. And as you all know, I've changed horses and moved from Sassoon to a colour manufacturer that I'm not going to bring up because this is not a promotion piece here. But that's been an incredible journey. And I've been with them now 6+ years. And probably in 6+ years, I've learned as much, if not more, than 32 years with Sassoon. I think what I'm saying with all these 3 tipping points is, I think, you can look at things and think, oh, it's a negative, or you can try to find that half full glass. Yeah. And I think in 99% of situations, you can find, if you look hard enough, you can find the half full.
Yeah, it's really
I'm rambling, Chris.
No, of course. It's really interesting.
That's why we want you on here.
Yeah, I wanted to share with everybody who's watching that and let them into a side. You and I had a conversation yesterday, apart from this, which I found deeply thought-provoking and kept me awake most of the night, you'll be glad to hear. But the best conversations do. And I'd really love, with Chris' permission, to spend the rest of this interview talking about those 2 subjects. And one subject was, you told me a really interesting story about the hardships that you'd been through, because right now you fly business class to every country in the world and you're in constant demand and you're at the very pinnacle, what we might call the glamorous side of what we do, even though I recognize it's a very thin veneer of glamour. But you told me some stories that you had when you were at the very beginning of your teaching, where you would have to supplement that by going into the salon at Sassoon's to work, early mornings, late evenings, work your day off, work Sunday, all of that just to get through some of these, even, dare I say, financial hardships that you have. The reality is that we have a lot of people listening here that are at the beginning of their careers, and you and I can acknowledge that they're going to face those same hardships. What did you do to keep you going, to stop you from giving up? What kind of advice can you offer them to keep them going, so that they in turn one day can help to change people's lives with their education?
Well, I truly believe that, when you leave high school or you leave university, there's lots of different paths that all of us can take. And, I think just about everybody listening to this broadcast is pretty clear that they're not on the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, office cubicle path, which in one sense offers a tremendous amount of security and predictability. But on the other side, I think most people listening on this broadcast would want to jump off the edge of a cliff if that's what their future entailed. So, to your point, Chris, I think many people who are in the arts, and that's a broad statement there. I think a lot of people who are in the arts struggle, and they struggle financially, they struggle emotionally, and they struggle creatively. And again, if this is any kind of help to people listening in, I think every single one of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, every single one of us have struggled to one degree or other, and that's the line of work that we've gone into. And I know to one degree or other, I still doubt myself. I still struggle with a lot of what I do. And I just have to remind myself that that's normal. It really is normal to struggle. It's normal to doubt yourself. Yeah, I mean, the point that you're making earlier, Chris, is I mentioned when I first came to the States, you know, I would go to, I was based in Los Angeles. I'd go to New York, you know, once, twice, 3 times a year. And I booked myself into the salon there, the Sassoon salon, and I'd do customers. And I'd do it for 2 reasons. I'd do it, number one, because I just love connecting back to where the rubber meets the road. And then number 2, I'd do it because I needed the money. You know, I needed the tips, I needed the extra pay, etc. And for people that are familiar with New York City, this particular salon was where the Apple store is now. It's opposite the Plaza Hotel on Fifth Avenue. And then when I was in Los Angeles, every second Saturday, I would work on Rodeo Drive in the Sassoon salon, and pretty much, you know, do the same thing there and work on clients and customers and earn extra money. But I think where you're going, Chris, with this conversation is something keeps me up at night, and that I think is the state of where we're at as an industry, as a craft. And I just want to preface what I'm about to say here, and that is that I'm not necessarily talking about people that the 3 of us, the Chris, and the Stephen. I'm not necessarily talking about the USA or Europe or any particular region of the world. And I'm not particularly talking about any group of hairdressers, because I know on this call, there are people that are, you know, commission-based stylists. There are people that are salary people. There are people that are rental. There are people that are working suites. But the one thing that I kind of tend to hear when I travel to different parts of the world is to one degree or other, and I'm using the royal we here, that we probably could do better. We could do better with clients, with client visitation, the amount of visitation. We could do better with the average ticket, pricing, etc. And that's the one thing that I hear when I travel, Chris. You know, when I go to Russia or I go to Brazil or whatever, you know, when I'm done with work, I'll have to go and have a meal or a drink with stylists and with, you know, with salon owners. And to one degree or other, you hear this message that we're kind of losing customers. And I think in many people's lives, maybe people under the age of 25, their iPhone is way more important than their hair. You know, the data plan is more important than the makeup and the way they look. And you know, part of that, I think, in many instances, it's a perfect storm. I think 2008 and the financial crisis drove us and drove customers to grown out color and to balayage and to the visitation habit going broader, to a 4-week color going over to a 6-month color. And center partings and hair down to people's elbows, again, became a trend and a fashion. And I think in many ways, when you study why, in many ways, I think it's a necessity. But having said that, you know, we don't have to go to university and study fashion to realize that fashion goes around in ever decreasing circles. And I think that look, as an industry, you know, that look, we need to sort of move on. And we need to move on, A, because of trend and fashion. And 2, I think we need to move on because we need to drive customers to, you know, maybe visiting us more often. You know, moving back to a situation where we've got people in our salons on a little bit more of a regular basis. And I realize that, you know, some people's financial situations are one way or another. And some people think more highly of what's on top of their head than others. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've been working on just recently, is really sort of working with hairdressers with what we call a suggestive consultation, which really kind of takes the conversation of with a client and kind of moves away from constantly saying yes to clients. And I know to many people on the phone that might sound very peculiar, to question why you would say yes to a client. And I'm not for one sake advocating that we shouldn't say yes. But I think sometimes in some conversations, there's an ability to say yes and then glue on to the end of yes. I hear what you're saying and I'm with you and I'm hearing you, but would you mind if I made some suggestions? Would you mind if I showed you some pictures? Would you mind if I offered up some alternatives? And I realized that, you might not take me up on that alternative right now. And you might want to talk to your husband, or you might want to talk to your boyfriend, or you might want to think about it. But I just think it's putting us in the driving seat when we offer alternatives to people. And obviously some people come in and they ask for something, it's going to look amazing. And we're really happy with that. But I think also sometimes people come to us and they don't really know what they want, but they're too afraid to sort of ask, so they're very specific. And I also realize too, when we work in a salon, sometimes we're in a hurry. Sometimes, we don't have a skill set that will allow us to move away from that. I got that bit. But I've just never heard, Chris, of a customer not returning to a stylist because they're suggestive.
Right.
Because they're showing them new collections, because they're showing them new pictures, because they're showing them new colors, because they're showing them new ideas. I have, however, sat on an airplane and sat next to that woman who, once she realizes you're a hairdresser, says, I can't find anybody that won't keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I can't remember where we started talking about this. We've gone around in a circle.
No,
Where did it start, Chris?
But to that point, though, there was an interesting survey that came out a while back where they said that they asked hairdressers and then they asked consumers about do they give or get a great consultation. And 97% of the hairdressers said that they give an amazing consultation, and only 7% of the consumers said they actually got a consultation that was worthwhile. That's my paraphrase. Yeah. But it's interesting in the figure, isn't it? Now, I know you've got another question there, but I know that we have some people. This is something that came up from one of our viewers, and this is from Kelly Hall. There's umlauts involved, so either you're from Germany or I'm not pronouncing your name right. So I apologize for that, Kelly. But it says here, what kept you going when you were struggling? With yourself or your business, and then how do you keep that passion separate from the desperation to succeed and be successful? And I find that, very poignant with a lot of people that are out there that are trying to get better at what they do and succeed.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's a really good. Was it Kelly?
Yeah, Kelly Hall. Yeah,
thank you, Kelly. That's a great question. I think when I'm down, and I still get down, Chris, and there's times when I just get frustrated with myself. I get frustrated with people around me. What I always remind myself is that at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about my feelings. My career path from beginning to end has always been, how can I raise the bar with that hairdresser? How can I make that hairdresser more confident? How can I make that hairdresser more skillful? How can I hold hands with that hairdresser and help them? And I think ultimately, the ultimate one is how can I make that person more financially successful? And that's the one thing that I constantly sort of remind myself is it's not about me. It's really about the person that's in front of me. And quite some time ago, I clearly identified in my role that my client is not Mrs. Smith.
Right.
in my role, my client is Joe Hairdresser. And that's been my career path from the very, very beginning. So, when I'm down and I just need a kick, I just say to myself, come on, Stephen, if you can just be in a place where you can just share one small tip that's going to help that hairdresser with their day, to help them get through their day 30 seconds faster, or just be able to put a smile on that hairdresser's face to where it helps them with the day, it helps them with the consultation, or it helps them with suitability, or whatever it is that I might be teaching them. To me, that's the thing that helps me pull myself up and out. And it's not easy. Mm-hmm. And I think whether you stand behind a chair and you do, 15 clients a day and charge, $12 a haircut, or you stand behind a chair and you do 5 clients a day and you charge $450 a day. All of us get down. All of us get down. And the thing that I also want to share on this thing here is that, as hairdressers, we're like a battery. We're just constantly giving out. And any battery at some point will get very close to being totally drained. And at that point, that battery either has to be replaced or it has to be recharged. And with us as hairdressers, the only way we can get recharged is education. And I just finished making a whole series of pay-per-view videos. And I kind of start and finish the videos, Chris, by saying something to the tune of, thank you for putting your hand in your pocket and paying $19.99 to come and watch this video. However, watching online 24 hours a day, 52 weeks a year available education is no substitution for live, real, hands-on, face-to-face, in salon, in academy, in studio education. And I think that's really, really where the magic comes together. And I think as hairdressers, that's where the light bulb goes out. And this broadcast here is fantastic. It's absolutely amazing. And we all understand that not everybody can take hands-on education. And not everybody can take hands-on education as regularly as they like. And I would advocate, GPS and this program as a fantastic program to supplement that. But if you're watching this at home, if you can, save your pennies, put your money together and really attend ongoing, hands-on, face-to-face education, no matter where it is, if it's a manufacturer or it's an academy or wherever it is, because that's really, I think, where your skill set, your confidence is elevated. And again, I started by talking about my mum, and I don't want to make this all about my mum, but I clearly remember one day listening to her doing a client's hair, and she said to this client, I won't be able to do your hair when you come back in 6 weeks. I can do you in 7 weeks. She said, when you come back in 6 weeks, I'm going to be at Vidal Sassoon. And I clearly remember this client saying something to the tune of, how on earth do you afford to go to London twice a year? How do you afford to stay in a hotel? How do you afford the trade fair? How do you afford to pay the course fees? It must be a lot of money. Where do you get the money from that? And she said, that's easy. She said, you're paying for it. But when you come back, I'll have increased my prices. And I think, we sometimes as an industry, we've got to value ourselves. We've got to look at what we're worth and we've got to invest in ourselves. But at the same time, the person that's paying our mortgage and the person that's paying for the rent on the building, they're also paying for our education. Mm-hmm. And I go to a wonderful, wonderful dentist. And he's a wonderful, wonderful dentist for one reason and one reason only. He takes ongoing education.
Yeah. Yeah, and so here's another. This is another question that came up. It's from Brian and Sandra, and the question is, what was the big difference working at Sassoon's to where you are now?
Is this Brian and Sandra Smith?
There was no last name, but I have a feeling it was Brian and Sandra. We all know them.
Brian and Sandra Smith, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think the biggest difference is that at Sassoon, I was very, very much focused on education that was focused around cutting hair or colouring hair. And I think where I am now, I think I'm focusing on a much broader spectrum of linking colour and cut and finish together. I don't think it's so much where I'm working, it's much more to do with 2018. And I think in 2018, I think people who are just cutting hair or mainly focused on cutting hair, or people who are mainly focused on colouring hair, I think there's more financial opportunities when you link everything together. And I think that really would be my biggest difference. To answer Brian and Sandra's question, is what I'm delivering now is focused very, very much on kind of making that connection, so that that the end result is a premium, and it's B, suitable to them as a person and their lifestyle, but probably most importantly of all, C, it's really putting things on people's heads that they can't do themselves. They can't go on YouTube. They can't have done in the kitchen. So it's really kind of elevating looks to another level, but at the same time, really elevating that average ticket and driving that person to visit a professional hair salon, more times than twice a year. So it's really coming back to what I was saying earlier, Chris, is really pushing and working hairdressers towards being confident in that consultation and driving visitation down and driving average ticket.
Steve, we're approaching the end of our time now. It's gone so quickly. I wish we'd got more time with you, but sadly not. One of the things that Chris and I say when people talk to us about what the teachers make, we always say that teachers make one thing: teachers make a difference. That's what teachers make. So, in summary, to send us forward into the breach, Stephen, what can we best do as teachers to make a difference to this industry?
I think be patient, be compassionate. I think as educators, we have to understand that in front of us is such an array of different people who learn with different learning styles, have different expectations. And the one thing that I'm constantly struggling with, Chris, every single day of my teaching career, and again, it's something that I would share with anybody who teaches, is find that balance. Because, I stopped teaching what's written in the curriculum a long, long time ago. My philosophy has always been to teach the people that are in front of you rather than teaching a curriculum.
Amen.
And that needs a lot of agility. It needs a tremendous amount of agility and patience.
Amen.
And I think that would be the main thing is really patience, being compassionate and really understanding that not every single one of us learn the same way. We all have different things that float our boat.
Yeah,
great. Fantastic.
Just anecdotally here, I'm sure that you guys probably remember, but Kelly Hall actually trained at Moody Hair about 20 years ago. So I just found that was a great one, and thanks for letting us know that, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Kelly. I just have to say off to my side is my wife who's passing notes, and I love you, Stephen, in a brotherly way. But the fact that you said patience is something that I have, I know I'm going to get a stern talking to when I get off this call. But just, and I don't want to say in wrapping up, because I don't want anybody to jump off of this, because I still want to do something with you at the end, but they always say, and I remember taking a personal development course, and they made us write an epitaph for our own self, meaning of like, if you wanted to see yourself now, you should think about what do you want people to say about you when you've left us. And I don't mean that you're leaving us worldly, but let's say that you decided not to do hair anymore tomorrow, which I hope not. But what would that be? What would you want the world to remember you for, or to say about you?
That hasn't changed for 30 some years, Chris. And every class that I deliver, I go around the room. I'm sure you do the same thing. And I ask for people's expectations of what is it that they want to achieve in that day or that week or that hour or whatever. And to make it difficult, I kind of get it down to one word. And I say, just give me one word that you want to walk out of the room with. And when I've gone around the room, I then share with them what's mine. And I say, because I'm the boss, I can have 2 words. So mine is share and retain. Because I'm a great believer in it's all well and good me sharing, but if what I share you cannot remember, it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of my time. So I think on my tombstone, it would be really nice if they put he shared and people remembered.
Oh, wow.
Very good.
Yeah. Now we're going, comes from Christine. And she said, and I think this pertains to the question before that Chris was asking, and I think she wanted a little wrap up on that, where she said, where do you see the industry going? Because I think we talked about where it is, and you talked about where it's going to trend, and you talked about it, how it's a decreasing circle that comes back down. And I think her question is where do you see that the industry is going?
I think it's going towards the opposite of where it is now, Chris. I mean, in general, I find it very dull at the moment. I find it quite frustrating for many people. And, the opposite to frustrating and dull is exciting and new and different. And, a hemline goes up, and it can only go so far up, and then it has, for obvious reasons, got to go back down again. And I think, we've been in a lull at the moment, and I think we're going to sort ourselves out very quickly. I think the recipe for success is for us to be inward looking. And again, my brother and I had a really good conversation about this the other night. And I really truly believe, Chris, that there isn't another Vidal Sassoon or another Horst Reckelbecker or a Paul Mitchell or whatever is going to come over the horizon and rescue us. I also think, too, that there's not going to be a movie with a movie star who has an incredible look that's going to make people come charging through the salon door and knock the hinges off the door. I think it's really down to us.
Yes.
And it's down to us with every single client, day by day, one-on-one, and, of really kind of nurturing our clients and driving that suggestive consultation to where, we're really being confident with that consultation. But, as I said earlier, the flip side to that is it's all well and good having a suggestive consultation. You've got to be able to back it up with your actions. And this all I sound like a broken record, but this all comes back to ongoing education.
Mm-hmm.
And, ongoing education in your pajamas, in your bedroom, watching a computer screen is incredibly limiting. education, that's part of education, but the other part of it is doing hands-on and really getting to classes where you've got quality educators with relatively small ratios who are sharing with you things on people. Because at the end of the day, a successful hairstylist doesn't do 13 mannequins on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
They do 13 people.
Exactly.
And I'm a believer that education should be delivered on people, not on swatches and not on mannequins and not with rubber balls.
Yeah.
And yeah, easy for me to say, but not easy to do.
Exactly. Stephen, I'm going to ask your permission on something very shortly here. I did this with Chris, your brother, when I interviewed him when he started with our company here, and this is you probably may be familiar with it. There are questions that on a French series that Bernard Pivot and Pivot in English, that he would ask on what his show was called the Bouillons de Culture. And I'm sure that anybody speaking French is appalled by my French accent. It's probably better known by James Lipton, who people know of from the Inside the Actor's Studio. And there was always 10 questions that he would ask everybody at the end of the show. And I just want your permission if I can ask you those questions.
You can, providing I can have the last word, because I want to say something at the end.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, good. So
fire away.
Fire away. Here we go. Okay, favorite word?
Always.
Least favorite word?
Never.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Change.
What turns you off?
Stagnation.
Your favorite curse word?
Dagnabbit.
Awesome. What sounds or noises do you love?
Smiles.
What sounds or noises do you hate?
Frowns.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh my goodness, you've got me here, Chris. Motorcycle journalist.
Oh, love it. What profession would you not like to do?
Work for the IRA.
If heaven exists, what would you like God to say when you arrived at the pearly gates?
One more time, Chris, you cut out there.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
We've been waiting for you.
I love it. I love it. Listen, I'm going to do two things here. I want you to give you any final words that you have to say, Stephen, and then I'm going to let Mr. Moody close it out. So, Stephen, any final words?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I have tremendous respect for you two, for the two Chris's. Chris Baran, I've known you for many, many years, and I've never heard a hairdresser say a bad word about how and what you deliver. And if anybody listening on this podcast can get in the same room with these two people, they are tremendously passionate, tremendously talented. And I think that will definitely be a fantastic investment. And I'm not just saying that because they're on here and one of them is my brother. And the last thing I wanted to do, Chris, was a shameless plug, if that's okay.
Go for it.
My name is Hair Moody, HAIRMOODY. And if you want to follow me, that's my name on Instagram. And thank you very much for having me on this. I really appreciate that. And yeah, stay in touch.
Absolutely, my friend.
Stephen, you've just come back off about 4 weeks of continuous on-the-road education. You've just done an event that has completely drained you with 18 hours non-stop work. You told me yesterday that you haven't eaten properly for 4 days or slept for more than 4 hours. You're on vacation at your parents' house, and you've still agreed to come and do this. They say that that you know, many people will speak to you if they have some free time, but only truly great people will free time in order to speak to you. And that's what you've done for us, Stephen. And it's always a pleasure speaking to you, mate. And it's been a great pleasure here. For anybody that's listening, they always say you should be careful never to meet your heroes. But I promise you, and I can tell you this on a personal level, if you meet this particular hero, you won't be disappointed with that meeting, because what you see is what you get, a truly honourable and thoughtful man. This has been our GPS Interview with Icons broadcast. We're going to have more Icons interviews planned for later on in the year as well. Let us know if there's anybody you think we should approach. If you want to know more about GPS and how you can get involved in the program that Chris and I run, please go visit coachchrisbaran.com, where you'll be able to sign up and find out more information about this and other programs that we run as well. Stephen Moody, hairdresser, teacher extraordinaire, and global icon, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very, very much for your time, for your energy, and for your insights.
Thank you. And everybody remember Herr Moody. That's not the German Herr Moody, right? That would be Herr Moody.
Herr Moody.
All right, to all of you who took the time out to watch and to listen to this, for Stephen, you, my friend, I can't say I'm only going to speak for myself, but if all the people in the audience are feeling the same thing that I am right now, there's just one word that comes out, and that is blessed. So thank you so much. And in the meantime, as I always say to everybody, good luck, God bless, and we love you all. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.